Hello world, welcome back to the Razor RC, and it's time for the full review of the Kyosho Inferno MP9 TKI4 V2. So that's a long name there, quite a mouthful, but yeah, I bought this about a couple months ago. I've been bashing it, breaking it, fixing it, tuning it, all that good stuff, and want to share my final thoughts on this little buggy. It's a 1/8 scale nitro powered 4-wheel drive race buggy. It comes in an RTR format. This is a couple generations old from their current race buggy, so that would be the MP10 TKI4. So for those who are not familiar, Inferno is basically their 1/8 scale line of vehicles. It was originally all nitro vehicles back in the early 2000s and stuff. MP9 is their generation MP9, so kind of like their ninth generation, not really their ninth generation, but that is the major model designation. And then TKI4, that's basically like the .4. TKI stands for Team Kyosho International, and the 4 is a .4. So this was the last of the MP9s. Then they went on to the MP10s, which they still make today. So yeah, this was a full-on race buggy back in the day, probably, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, something like that, before they came out with the MP10. It comes in a ready-to-run format. And one really interesting thing about this vehicle is it kind of reminds me of a BMW ad back in the 80s, those of you that are old like me, when they brought the M3 to the US. The tagline in the commercial said, yeah, this thing is so serious, it only comes in a stick shift. And yeah, again, with the Kyosho MP9 TKI4, it's so serious, it only comes in a nitro version. You cannot get a brushless electric vehicle version of this. Kind of interesting. Kyosho has long been kind of a, in the nitro mix, and big fans of the nitro stuff. So this is a very serious vehicle. It is an RTR, retails for $500 here in the US. And yeah, so we're going to be talking about this vehicle. So competitors to the MP9 are going to be things like the Serpent SRX8, the Hobao Hyper VS2, the HPI Racing Vorza 3.5. So kind of vehicles at that $500 level and above is what I consider to be kind of the upper level class of nitro RTR buggies. And then they got the lower spec vehicles like this little bro, the Inferno Neo 3.0, the HPI Trophy 3.5, and maybe even like the Low C8 I would consider a little bit lower spec than this vehicle. So yeah, the way this review works is we're going to be giving it a rating in 6 different categories, and it's compared to those other vehicles I just mentioned. I have pretty much all of them, so very familiar with all the RTR nitro buggies you can buy. 3 stars would be average within the class. Doesn't mean it's a bad score, just means it's kind of typical among the other vehicles you can buy for $500. And then 5 stars would obviously be best in class, and 1 star would be worst in class. So let's get into the review. We're going to pull off the wheels and tires as well as the body. Really nice body. Comes in a nice painted orange and gray paint scheme. This is the V2 version, so the V1 version came in like a red and white version, so slightly different this, but very similar. Really the only change was to the front shock tower, where they went to a 5mm shock tower just to add some additional durability. But this is what the vehicle looks like. As you can see, the KE21 SP engine there, 0.21 cubic inches. It's got the nice layout of the more modern battery trays. Pretty, sort of weight forward bias. 125cc fuel tank like you would expect. A nice little polished, tuned pipe there. Big bore shocks, all aluminum all the way around. Tire-wise, kind of a, in between race or basher style tire. Pretty good in a lot of different circumstances. But the first category we're going to be talking about is the engine and electronics. The 0.21 engine, in my opinion, is pretty much the best RTR 0.21s out there. The the Low C I feel is a little bit slower. The Serpent engine, in my opinion, is a little bit slower. The HPI stuff's a little bit slower. A lot of these engines are based off of forced engines. I think even this one is based off a forced engine, but you can tell definitely the cooling head is a little bit different. It's got like nice machining on the fins and stuff. Maybe the tune is different, or the carb is different, or something, because this seems a little more powerful than other vehicles in its class, especially for an RTR vehicle. It does feel much closer to, say, a race engine than some of the other engines that you get. Electronics wise, it does come with these servos. I don't know, what are those? KS503109MW, so metal geared waterproof servos. pretty decent overall. You know, I wouldn't say they're the fastest or most powerful servos, but they're pretty typical for what you find in an RTR vehicle. Not slow at all. I don't think you need to swap them out. Maybe the steering one, but the throttle one works totally fine. And kind of the highlight of the engine electronics is the radio. This is the Synchro KT331P. 2.4 gigahertz radio, of course, takes 4 AA's, but the really nice thing about it is it does have an actual display. So full-on LCD display, has tons of adjustments. You know, all your steering, reversing, it even has ABS, endpoint adjustment, dual rate, trim settings, of course, and expo. So a lot of features. It's even multi-model memory. So in my opinion, this is actually pretty much the best RTR radio you can get on any vehicle I've pretty much seen. Really, really high quality radio. 3-channel as well. Does have a foam wheel. Trigger feels really good. Does have adjustments for trims here on the side. The wheel is angled a little bit, so you know a lot of people might not like that, but it doesn't really bother me. You kind of get used to it. So high quality radio. This is honestly close to like $100 Sandwall radio. Even has a multi-model memory. So really, really nice high quality radio. The best in class. Engine, again, I think is best in class. There are no other engines, in my opinion, out there that are faster. The Haval Hyper VS2 engine is faster, but it is a 0.30 engine, so it's pretty much a cheater engine, right? This is a 0.21, that's a 0.30. That thing is a torque monster, a ridiculous amount of power, but for a 0.21, I think this is best in class. Servos are decent. Again, you know, I think there are some other vehicles come with slightly better servos, like the Serpent, I think, is a little bit better, but overall, really, really high quality component parts. I think Kyosho kind of builds this as something you can truly take and race right out of the box. Even the radio, I think, is, you know, kind of entry-level race available, race ready. The engine, I think, is, you know, obviously on the slow side for a race radio, but still definitely much faster than your typical RTR components. So overall, in the engine electronics, one of the highlights of the vehicle, definitely best components overall. I'm going to give it a full 5 stars. I don't think you can find another RTR Nitro vehicle out there that comes with better stuff out of the box. This is much closer to a race vehicle than most other brands. Design-wise, yeah, this is pretty much obviously the MP9 TKI4. It does have some kind of lower budget spec stuff. It does have, you know, lower 6061 aluminum chassis here on the bottom. The front shock tower, I actually switched out to the kit spec version because I did find that the stock one did bend a little bit. The rear shock tower, again, is a lower spec type of aluminum. Rest of the vehicle is pretty high quality. Shocks are pretty nice. I don't think they're exactly the same as the kit pieces, but they're still all aluminum, including aluminum shock caps. Really nice, pretty smooth overall. Plastics seem very similar to the kit spec stuff, but I think all these sort of dark brown pieces probably lower spec aluminum. So you can definitely obviously upgrade to the higher spec kit aluminum 7075 pieces. Those are all made in Japan. Really, really nice pieces, but they are going to be fairly expensive. All these parts that have kind of this lighter brown tan color are going to be the kit level spec parts. So design wise, obviously very similar to MP9. Pull start engine, polished tuned pipe, 2 needle carburetor, fuel tank I think is a kit spec part. The air filter again is kit spec part. Unlike the Inferno Inferno Neo 3.0, which has kind of a RTR air filter. It does have some interesting components, like a little, I don't know what you call this, kind of a dirt guard or whatever to kind of pull off mud or anything here in the back. Does have mud guards here in the back. Aluminum spindles, C-hub design, adjustable turnbuckles front and rear, including adjustable steering links. They are a little bit on the thin side, but did not, you know, find any failures with that. Phillips head screws throughout, so that's probably my #1 complaint about the design. For whatever reason, they're using hex head hardware in the kit version, and then Phillips head screws here in the RTR version. But all the adjustments you would expect, sway bars front and rear, you can adjustable camber links. Not as many adjustments on these links. On the front and rear, you're just only a couple holes. Again, I think on the shock towers, not as many adjustments for the shock locations as on the kit version, but more than enough. They also have adjustable pills here, basically to allow you to adjust and raise those camber links, and then the rear anti-squat and rear toe as well. So a lot of adjustments as you would expect on a full-on race vehicle. Plastic, you know, chassis guards or chassis braces here in the middle. Does have a nice aluminum you know, steering rack mount here in the front to kind of tie everything together. Add a little more durability there. So overall, design-wise, I'm going to give it 4 stars. It's pretty easy to work on. It does have the adjustable pills, which is an improvement over the older Inferno Neo 3.0. In terms of working on it, not too hard to work on, pretty typical for a RTR vehicle. You know, the diffs are not too hard to get at. You do have to remove the front bumper and kind of pop out that front hinge pin brace to get the diff cover off, but it does split in half, so not too hard to work on. Really, the only thing I don't like is the hex or the Phillips head hardware. I wish they came with hex hardware out of the box. You probably have to spend around 30 bucks or so to swap everything out, and you know, I just kind of switch things out as I remove them. You know, as I remove these screws and stuff like that, I just kind of switch them out for hex hardware, but you know, not a major problem, just something slightly annoying. So in the design category, I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I don't think it's best in class. If it had hex hardware, I would say it's probably one of the best. No real complaints. I do like the battery tray. The battery compartment in particular is easy to get to. I like these body clips. You just pop them open, you can get out to your plugs and stuff like that. So that's really convenient. A little bit better than some of the other designs where you have to use screws to remove those. So adjustable servo saver, adjustable drag link. So pretty good overall. I do like it. 4 stars in the design category. Again, above average, I think. Performance is another area where I think the MP9 TKI4 excels. It drives quite a bit better than the Neo 3.0 actually, which is based off the MP 7.5. So a little bit more stable. They did kind of change the weight balance a little bit. It seems like the weight's a little more far forward. The electronics tray is changed the layout a bit. It does have the big bore shocks. I think that works a little bit better than the plastic shocks on the Inferno Neo 3.0. Just seems a little more stable. The Neo 3.0 I felt like was a little edgy, a little harder to drive. This is a little more consistent. I think overall drives a little bit better. Engine wise, they are pretty much the same between those two, so if you want to spend 150 bucks, you're not going to need any more speed, but I think the platform itself is a little better. In terms of how it actually handles, it drives quite well. Actually, the suspension is set up pretty soft out of the box, which I think is proper for racing. If you're just bashing this thing, maybe you want to stiffen up the shocks and stuff, but discs feel really good, shocks feel really good, everything's really smooth. The springs feel really good, about the right rate, I think, for racing. Tires, I think, actually work pretty well overall. Not the most aggressive, like race compound and race style pattern, but if you're running on, you know, actual groomed surfaces on a groomed racetrack, maybe you want to go with whole shocks or something like that. But this is a good all-around tire that I think will get you going in the majority of situations where you're going to be driving this thing. Again, like I said, power is excellent, brakes work well, flies pretty neutral through the air, pretty flat. The only thing you might want to tune is depending on how bumpy the surface you're on. You know, where I drive this thing is more of a BMX park. It's a large BMX park, so it's got nice big jumps and stuff like that, but it is very rough. It does have a lot of rocks, so suspension wise it can get kicked up here in the back off some of those jumps, but it does actually drive quite well, and certainly one of the best handling vehicles out there. In terms of the actual handling, is it the best vehicle? I think it's pretty close. It might be a step down from the Serpent. I do have a Serpent SRX8 which drives amazing as well. I don't have as much time on that as this. This does seem like a little bit edgier, a little bit harder to drive, but it is set up a little bit softer as well. But power-wise, there's nothing that is in its class, and that's why I'm going to give the performance 5-star rating. I think this is best in class. Might not quite be the best handling 8-scale buggy you can buy, but the engine is definitely faster, quite a bit of a step above the other engines out there. So it might be 1 step higher in the speed, half a step down in the handling, but overall that makes it best in class, and that's why I'm giving it 5 stars in the performance category. Kyoshos are not necessarily known as the most durable vehicles out there. I think this thing is reasonably durable, did not have too many issues, didn't break any plastic arms or spindles or anything like that. Did have some nasty tumbles, and overall it seems fairly durable. The one area that they actually updated on the V2 is to go with a thicker shock tower. So this is a 5mm piece. But as you can see, I still bent this. It's a really cheap cast piece, you know, probably is 20 bucks or something to replace. But I do find that the Kyosho shock tires in particular are not as durable. Most of them have an additional brace that go across the top of the shock tower, but the Kyosho, for whatever reason, they don't like that. They like having a U-shape, but I do think it makes it a little bit flimsier. This thing, although it is an update from the V1, in my opinion, is still a weaker part. I do recommend getting the kit version. It is fairly expensive. It's made in Japan, super high quality machine, 75 piece, but it is like $75 as well. So fairly expensive. That would be the one thing I would say is probably worth upgrading. The other area that's kind of weak, again, is with this aluminum chassis. It is a cheap aluminum chassis. You know, is it curved? Maybe a little bit bent there. But yeah, I do find the aluminum chassis, again, be fairly weak. And then you can see these ears are also quite bent up. They're not flat anymore. And then as a result, your droop changes, your handling changes. That, again, I think is maybe an area you want to upgrade. Maybe go with the Kit 7075 piece. It's going to be more durable, stay straighter. Those ears are not going to bend quite as easily. So yeah, durability-wise, I think it's kind of average. No real major catastrophic issues. But, you know, as you can see, the aluminum pieces that are these dark brown color, yeah, they're pretty cheap. I mean, they're definitely like made in China, just enough to get you going, but they're not going to hold up as well as a kit version. So I would actually recommend probably upgrading those pieces. It's going to cost you quite a bit. I think it's like $200 retail to get the chassis and the shock tower. The shock tower, I think, is kind of a must, or you can just bend this back every time you drive it, I guess. But that's kind of the one area I did have a concern. But no problems with the arms, no problem with the steering knuckles, no problem with the drive shafts or anything like that. So the rest of it held up. Even the rear shock tower, I think, is pretty well protected. So I don't think you have to upgrade that. You could buy that piece as well. It's like $50 or $60, but I don't think that's a must-have. Shocks seem fine. Shock shafts are all straight. Wing held up, engine held up, so everything holds up quite well. Just that front shock tower, I think, is a weak point. So in the durability category, this is going to get an average rating. I'm going to give it 3 stars. I do think other vehicles out there are more durable. The Habao is nasty. It's full-on 7075 race aluminum parts throughout. It's a beast. I think that thing's almost unbreakable. Serpent seems a little bit more durable, a little bit higher quality aluminum metals being used in that. So I think that probably is more durable. The low C may be a little less durable. But yeah, within the durability category, I'm going to give it 3 stars. I think it's about average. Nitro Buggies, for the most part, are being made by smaller companies, HPI Racing, Habao, Serpent, and then Kyosho. So among all those vehicles, actually the Kyosho is probably the biggest brand and the easiest to get parts. Here in the US, they have Kyosho USA, so you can buy all your parts there. Amin carries parts, or Hobbies, I think, carries parts. So you can get parts pretty much everywhere. A lot of hobby shops as well is going to carry parts. Maybe not everything that you need for this, but I don't think that's really an issue. For the most part, Kyosho is actually one of the better supported brands out there. Working on this vehicle, again, I don't like the Phillips head hardware, but beyond that, you know, it's pretty typical. Some of the screws and stuff you'll need to replace if you want to go to some of these optional parts, like you know, I put in basically hex flathead screws there. Typically with the original piece you use a button head screw, so you will need to change this out if you do some upgrades, because kit parts and the RTR parts slightly different on some of the screws. But this vehicle overall, easier to get parts than anything else out there. I'm not comparing it to other non-RTR brands, like Team Associate doesn't have an RTR Nitro Buggy, so I'm not even going to compare to that. It's really among all those other brands that make these types of things. This is best in class. Not super easy to get parts, but for the most part, you're not going to have too many issues. Stuff can get back ordered here and there, but you know, HPI I think is worse. Serpent I think is worse, and Habao I think is also worse. So in the support and maintenance category, I'm going to give full 5 stars. This is best in class. You're going to have the least trouble keeping this thing up and running, I think, as compared to all the other brands. The MP9 TKI4 retails for $500 here in the US. That's pretty typical. The Serpent SRX8, I think, is like $490, $495, something like that. The Habao is actually quite a bit more at $620, $630. The HPI Racing Forza 3.5, again, is also $500, but it is down spec. It does have plastic shocks. I think it's even got plastic hinge pin braces, so it's not quite as durable, not as quite nice premium parts. This radio is best in class. I don't think you can get any other radio like this in an RTR, whereas the other vehicles tend to have pretty crappy radios. This is a really, really nice radio, the best RTR radio I've found. So that is, you know, worth $80 or something by itself. That's a really, really nice radio. Engine best in class, turbos are adequate. You know, yeah, some of the aluminum pieces I think are kind of cheap. They really went super budget on all the dark brown pieces you see here. All the major aluminum pieces are lower spec. and I think it's a little bit annoying, so that's why I'm not going to give a full 5 stars. I think the Serpent is actually a little bit of a better value, much better quality of aluminum and metals that they use. That even though the radio is a lot cheaper, even though the engine's not as fast, it's about the same price, or a few dollars less than this, and I think it has higher quality parts. But overall, value-wise, I think this is a good value. A lot of people ask me, should I get this or the Neo 3.0? I think they're both pretty comparable, definitely. This has got the steel spur gear, which you would need to buy on the Neo 3.0. Shock towers, aluminums, all that stuff. It's pretty typical, but this does have the aluminum shocks, does have the much better radio. But I don't think you make a mistake either way. I mean, this has the nicer pipe, but in a little bit better air filter. So I think either one is fine. I think they're pretty comparable in value. You do get $150 worth more stuff here, but you don't have to buy this if you're just driving it for fun or bashing it. I think the Neo 3.0 is also a good value. If you're going to race it, I would say, yeah, definitely it's worth getting this one. It does drive a little bit better. It just handles better, easier to drive, a little more consistent. And I think the suspension also does work a little bit better. So in the value category, I'm going to give it 4 stars, not best in class. It is above average. The Habao is quite expensive. The HPI is about the same price, but has more, cheaper parts. So it is above average, 4 stars in the value category. So my final thoughts on the Inferno MP9 TKI4 V2. This is a great buggy. Certainly if you're looking for a higher end RTR Nitro Buggy, this is one of the ones I would definitely consider. I think it's easier to own and operate than the other brands, just because it's a bigger brand, easier to get parts, drives quite well out of the box. You may need to upgrade some parts. It's not as durable, I think, as the other ones. The Habao is the most durable A-scale buggy you can buy, in my opinion, but it's also the most expensive. It does have that big motor, but then it's not race legal, and it also probably drives the worst among all the higher end RTRs. So you have some trade-offs here and there. You trade off a little bit of durability here, but I think you get quite exceptional value, quite exceptional performance. Working and owning this thing is a little bit easier once you change out all the Phillips head hardware. Certainly if you don't already have a nice radio or race radio or whatever, this comes with something that I definitely don't think you need to upgrade. Most of the other RTRs, I think it's worth upgrading the radio. But yeah, this is a great vehicle overall. Between the Serpent and this, a lot of people are asking me which one is better. They're just slightly different. This is faster, handling wise, maybe a step down from the Serpent, but I think it's really close. Quality wise, it is quite a bit lower, but it's got the better engine, got the better radio, a little bit easier to own and operate. So you're making trade-offs here. Is one better than the other? It just kind of depends what you're looking for. Serpent, I think, is a high quality piece, but harder to get parts, a little bit slower. So it's not necessarily the end-all be-all of all race buggies. I don't think any race buggy is actually perfect, so that's kind of the lesson, I guess, to be learned. They all have strengths and weaknesses in different areas, so it's kind of depending on whether you want more speed, you want better performance, you want better handling, you want something easier to get parts, maybe you want a better radio, or maybe you don't care. All that kind of stuff is going to make have an impact and factors in deciding which one is best. But this is definitely an excellent buggy, one of my favorites. I'm big in this Nitro RTR space. I enjoyed trying them all and sort of buying and testing them and all that kind of stuff. And this is definitely one of the top in the class. So those are my thoughts on the Kyosho Inferno MP9 TKI4 V2. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe buttons. Look for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.